Welcome to the Catholic View for Women, news and views of interest to women discussed from a truly Catholic perspective. My name is Astrid Bennett Gutierrez. I'm Director of Los Angeles Pregnancy Services and spokesperson of Hispanics for Life. And my co-host is Janet Morana, Executive Director of Priests for Life.
Thank you, Astrid.
And to my left is our co-host as well, Teresa Tomeo of EWTN Radio. Catholic Connection is the name of the program.
Right.
Welcome, ladies.
Good to be here again.
Great to be here.
Our topic today is women and the church through the centuries. So we have lots to talk about, beauty, art, and why don't we start with you, Janet?
Well, you know, there's an important quote came out of the Second Vatican Council, and I like to remind everyone that's in the 60s when the sexual revolution was exploding and the radical feminism. Let's see what the church had to say. The hour is coming, in fact has come, when the vocation of woman is being acknowledged in its fullness, the hour in which women acquire in the world an influence, an effect, and a power never hitherto achieved. Now, does that sound like a church that's oppressing women?
No.
Absolutely
and
not.
what you said is so important, the fact that this was put out there right in the midst of the whole,
Of that
quote,
whole-
sexual revolution,
Right.
women's lib movement, and the church was being maligned publicly
Exactly.
for allegedly taking the opposite view when nothing
Right.
could be further from the truth.
Yeah. And it's like we say, the truth of the church in these documents, it doesn't see the light of day. And I think that's one of the purposes of this program, is to
Right.
help women realize that the church has been on your side through the centuries
Right.
and empowering women.
And this truth really was brought out. Teresa, you were recently at a Vatican
Yeah,
Congress
it was
for
a
women.
pretty big deal. It was actually in 2008, Astrid, and it feels like just yesterday because I still can't believe I was actually invited. There were 260 delegates from around the world, and it was a Vatican Congress on Women. It was put on by the Pontifical Council for the Laity of the Vatican. And the whole idea was to look at women and how far we've come or haven't come since the issuing of the document by John Paul II, Mulieris Dignitatem, on the dignity and vocation of women, which we've quoted several times in the shows here for Catholic View, and we're going to quote again in this episode of the program. And the whole idea really was to look at the history of women in the church, to look at, as I said, where we've come since that document in 1988, the papal letter to women, or Mulieris Dignitatem, and also the papal letter to women, which was actually issued in 1995. But to say, okay, let's step back and let's assess how have women been treated in society since these documents have come out, and what about over the centuries? So we went back and we looked at women in Scripture, and we looked at women in the culture, and we looked at the saints such as St. Catherine of Siena and St. Teresa of Avila and
her.
doctors of
Wonderful.
the church. And what I thought was so fascinating is, again, in every area, you know, and it's not expressed as well as it should be, as Janet, as you just pointed out, but in every area, the church is always doing what it can to uplift, uphold, and honor women.
That's right.
Yes.
And yet, it's not, and sometimes we've been our worst known enemies because we need better communication skills in terms of getting the message out there, and there have been problems and scandals, and we have to admit to that, so there at times has been a credibility issue. But overall, the church has always been teaching.
That's right.
And
We have
those teachings have been benefiting women.
We have to shed light on these wonderful examples. In my community, the Hispanic community, there are some amazing examples of women that are just incredible. There's one particular woman that I absolutely love, and during my reversion, I really learned about her life and her writings. Her name is Concepcion Cabrera de Armida. She's known...
Can you say that again?
Concepcion, I know, isn't it?
I'm glad I didn't have to pronounce that
She's
one.
got a nickname, though.
It's so beautiful.
She's got a
It rolls
nickname.
right off your tongue.
Concepcion Cabrera de Armida, and she's lovingly known as Conchita.
Oh.
And
Oh, that's
she-
easy. I can get the Conchita
Conchita,
part.
and she's amazing. She lived in the first part of the 20th century. She was a mother, a wife, as well as a spiritual foundress of an order of priests and sisters, the missionaries of the Holy Spirit. So here we have a person living, you know, over a century ago, but she was so fruitful, and so she contributed so much. And like her, so many women are in our church. We have to shed light on these amazing examples of women, and they served so joyfully, and they were happy because they had God. So these are really just shining examples that we have to
I got
put out
one
there.
for you from Italy, from my roots.
Italia.
St. Gianna Beretta Molla.
That's right.
Fantastic.
Pediatrician, wife, mother, gave her life for her child. I mean, awesome. And she's a great example because she was in the 20th century, and she was a working woman and a mom, and she was so involved in the church from Milano.
She gave her life.
She's from Milan, I think, or Turin, but anyway, northern Italy. And just she gave her life for her child. But also, she's a great example of what it means to be just everything a woman could be. You know how we always said you can, the women's lib thing was, oh well, you can be in the House or the Senate, or you could stay in the kitchen, or you could bring home the bacon and fry it up in a pan, whatever.
But here she did both. I mean, she was a doctor.
Oh yeah, and then she was very
mother.
involved in working with charities to help underprivileged children who couldn't afford. I mean, an incredible woman who lived in the 1950s, and what a great example. example.
Exactly.
And we don't hear about
being
these women.
Christ-like. I mean, she's truly Christ-like. She gave her life. I mean, and really, what an example of really giving up her life for the life of her child. I mean, that's a tremendous example of a heroic love. And there's so many saints in my childhood. I love to hear stories of Saint Agnes of God. I love to hear a story of my patron, Saint Maria Goretti. Just this heroic love that we're all called to live out in different ways. So the church really proposes so many wonderful examples, inspiring models for our young women as well.
One of the things that we've done, in addition to getting the camera crews out to the various areas to interview women on the street in their daily walks of life, we also talked to some experts. And we had Dr. LaFranchi on our program, Dr. Janet Smith, and we also had Katrina Zeno. I had the opportunity to interview her when I was in the Phoenix Diocese last year, speaking for Bishop Olmsted, who's an amazing bishop. He's just
God
incredible.
bless him,
He's
yes.
doing so many
Katrina,
great things.
I think, is a pretty good expert on theology of the body.
Theology
right?
of the body, the feminine genius. She writes a lot about John Paul II's teachings on women, and she was at the conference that I gave and got a chance to talk to her, and then we also had a chance to do a quick interview. And what we were asking the women who were at this diocesan event where I was speaking is to talk about a couple of different things in terms of not only why we needed a program like this, but also, you know, what about beauty, and what does that mean to you as a woman? And what does the church say about beauty and true feminine beauty? Let's see what Katrina has to say about that.
So what does it mean to be a Catholic woman in today's culture? What a fabulous question. Because I love being a Catholic woman in today's culture, and I especially love being a single Catholic woman in today's culture because people don't know what to do with me. You know, that's really kind of rather fun. Because people expect a Catholic woman to be rather dull, to not really have many interests, to be kind of retiring and shy, and actually the opposite. People who know me know I love to dance tango. I love the beach. I love water. I love all kinds of things to do. I love hiking. I love learning Spanish. And so for being a Catholic woman in our culture today means I take all those things that I love to be as a single woman, and I take them wherever I am. And I take them as a Catholic, meaning as someone who is passionately in love with Jesus Christ. And so what that means is it informs everything that I do. Not that I'm going to talk about Jesus in every tango dance that I have, but it means it makes a difference of when people ask me what I do, or when they ask me what did I do last weekend, or what my goals are in my life. They always have to do with how I can increase my faith, how I can be more humble, how I can draw closer to God, and how I can serve His church. And so being a Catholic woman today means figuring out how I can bring Jesus Christ into whatever setting I am as a woman and in whatever cultural situation I'm in.
I just think it's great to get women like Katrina, who are so well educated in theology and understand the church teachings, to explain to us that there is such a beauty in women, and not just in our appearance, but in our whole dignified, you know, persona, and how the church lifts us up. It's just incredible.
And an example of that is in Mulieris Dignitatem, a wonderful writing of John Paul II. I want to read this wonderful, powerful quote about what Christ really thinks of women. It says, "In all of Jesus' teaching, as well as in His behavior, one can find nothing which reflects the discrimination against women prevalent in His day. On the contrary, His words and works always express the respect and honor due to women. The woman with a stoop is called a daughter of Abraham, while in the whole Bible the title son of Abraham is used only of men. Walking the Via Dolorosa to Golgotha, Jesus will say to the women, 'Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me.' This way of speaking to and about women, as well as His manner of treating them, clearly constitutes an innovation with respect to the prevailing custom at the time."
That is so huge,
Amazing.
because if we start really just right from Scripture, and we talked about this in previous episodes how Jesus treated women, and then we look at this over the centuries, and this is what we studied when we were in Rome for the Vatican Congress, and the wonderful former Vatican ambassador Marianne Glendon has written about this as well, that the Church actually has been a champion of women and women's rights over the centuries, especially, for example, with marriage, because it was the Church, I think it was right after the Council of Trent, that fought against polygamy and fought against also arranged marriages, and felt that the woman should have an equal say into who she married. And so these are the kinds of things that the church has been doing over the centuries. Now, again, as we said earlier, not that the church, and we know through the writings of the great Catherine of Siena, a doctor of the church, and also St. Teresa of Avila, that there were a lot of issues that were going on with the hierarchy. We've had those over the centuries, and we can't ignore those. But at the same time, the church is still the church. Exactly. And the core teachings and the way that she has always uplifted women is just still something so beautiful that we need to get out there on a regular basis. Right. You know? Well, I think we're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we are going to hear from someone who knows all about how the church treats women, especially in art. And she's someone who's familiar to the EWTN viewers because she actually had a program, and it may still be running in EWTN. And she works in Rome, and I'll tell you more about Liz Lev, who happens to be the daughter of Mary Ann Glendon. Wonderful. Right? So, you know, the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. That's right. And I had a chance to interview her when she was in Detroit not too long ago about the church and how the church gives us this incredible view of women through art. And I'll also tell you about a trip I took in December of last year where we had the opportunity to see true feminine beauty in religious art. Fantastic. So stay tuned. Well, welcome back. This is the Catholic View for Women. Teresa Tomeo, Astrid Bennett Gutierrez, and Janet Morana. We're all co-hosts of this program, talking about views and news from a truly Catholic perspective, things that matter most to we as women in the Catholic Church. And in this segment of our program, we're talking about true beauty, the dignity of women, and women over the centuries in the Church. And as I mentioned, I had the opportunity to go and I lead tours. I go to the Holy Land quite frequently, as you know, and go to my favorite spot on the planet, which is Italy, as often as I can get there. Me too. My mother-in-law teases me, and she says I go there for a cup of coffee. I said, there's an idea. Yeah. A cappuccino or espresso.
And of course, the pasta there is fantastic.
It's amazing. But that's a whole other show.
Exactly.
God willing, someday in the future, a cooking show. But it was interesting because this was a different tour, and we took women, only women. Well, Dominic came along for the tail end of it. But it was all about feminine beauty in the arts. Wow. And it was a chance for us to see, okay, you know, here the world says this church is so oppressive and doesn't like women and wants to keep women down. Then everywhere you go in Italy, well, you know, you've been there.
Oh, absolutely.
Every time you turn the corner, there's another church and there's another statue, you know, dignifying a woman or a saint.
And they're beautiful.
And women are portrayed so gracefully. And the flowing clothes, and they're attractive, and they're shapely. They're not twigs. I mean, they look like normal, healthy women. Yeah, exactly. And so we decided, you know, we should, with all the art that is out there that uplifts women and shows our true dignity, we should put a tour together. And my husband and I are members of the Vatican Patrons of the Arts, which is a great organization to join. And basically what we do is just support the Vatican in refurbishing and putting this art out there for the world to engage the culture. And I said, let's get Liz Lev, who is, you know, an incredible art history professor in Rome, and she writes for Zenit, and she's very prominent over there teaching in the universities, and she leads tours and knows so much about this topic of feminine beauty in the arts. And she was in Detroit speaking recently, and so I had the opportunity to interview her and to talk about comparing how the church views women, especially in art, to how the world puts women out there. So let's see what she had to say.
I think for me, one of the things that really struck me as a Catholic and an art historian, and really awakened a sense of being a Catholic and an art historian, was particularly in the Vatican museums and the Sistine Chapel, seeing all these extraordinary renderings of women who are heroic, women who are powerful, women who are, you know, strong enough to stand beside and to act alongside men. It amazed me to think that a place like that, painted so long ago, would be able to speak to, you know, a woman from the 20th century, now the 21st century. So that's one aspect of it. But the other thing about walking through the Vatican Museum, walking through the whole body of Christian art, is how the Christians have explored these different visions of women over the years. You've seen Mary as this ethereal, almost untouchable, just splash of exotic, mesmerizing color. And we've also seen Mary as, you know, the mother of God holding her son, contemplating the body of her son. We've seen her as her most human. We've seen her as her most ethereal. We've seen her in all these wonderful different ways, which is the great gift of an art that's so universal that every artist has been able to envision these figures from our salvation in their own unique way and add to this great body of imagery.
And you, I know, doing this for so long as an art history professor, but taking people on so many tours, I'm sure you've probably seen the light go on, especially for women maybe who are objectified in the culture or have been objectified themselves, maybe through abortion or contraception, and then finally get it when they're going through these museums. Can you share what that's like for you as an art historian, as a tour guide, to see women who are understanding really who they are in Christ?
I think it's a very interesting thing to see. It's something that's very delicate, of course, because you deal with people's. I mean, you're talking about art, and all of a sudden, people's real life experience comes into play, and so it becomes much more on the surface. It's much more sensitive, and so one of the more startling things is to see how many women come into this church with this idea that the church hates women and the church dislikes women, oppresses women. And you sort of stop in the middle of the room and you look around and could you explain to me what is oppressive or exploitive about the way that Michelangelo renders the Sibyl in the ceiling, or the way that Raphael represents the muses in the Raphael rooms, the way that Mary seems to be the number one subject matter, not a Mary who's half-dressed, not a Mary who has to show off her physicality in order to be attractive, but Mary who is beautiful in that gentle face, Mary who is beautiful for the way she interacts with her son. Really, and it tends to really take people completely by surprise. They find themselves flustered, they find themselves a little bit quieter as they begin to rethink. It's a wonderful ambassador for the concept of the church and women, the art of Christianity.
What breaks your heart, and the last question, the most when you look at the culture today? You have daughters, you have children, when you see how women are being objectified versus what you come in contact with in your work as a art historian, the beauty, the dignity, the queen of our Blessed Mother, all those beautiful things, and we look at the culture and we see how women are so objectified every single day.
I think what wounds me as a mother and wounds me as a woman who's had to work, had a career as well, is this idea that somehow we have progressed somewhere in these past 20, 30, 40, 50 years where women hypersexualize themselves in television, in the media, in the workplace, all around you, and somehow consider that empowering or liberating or representing womanhood. I don't understand this kind of representation that's been forced on women, where you must be somehow sort of control of your sexuality is really just as simply putting the goods out onto a shelf where it looks almost like a bargain shelf. Whereas when you look at the preciousness and the care that an artist made in representing a body of a woman, the way that he would clothe her and drape her in either the simplest of forms and these beautifully flattering folds, and the way she'd be represented inside this nature, or Mary inside one of her beautiful thrones, or represented in mosaic, this endless way that art has had to represent the beauty and the uniqueness and the specialness of women. It just seems very cheap and tawdry and such a sad concept of progress.
Teresa, I just love that. I mean, just the way that the artist depicted the women, the saints, and art really represents something beyond just the physical beauty, which is there. Right. It's also a spiritual beauty that's timeless, that's eternal.
It's a reflection of God in creation.
Absolutely. And so this art reflects the dignity that women have and our calling as well as mothers, as grandmothers, and the beauty is just something that's universal. And this art, I think, really does help to show what the church really has taught through the centuries about who women
really are, absolutely. And I think, looking back on the programs that we've done so far, really just giving women just a taste of what the church has to offer. I mean, there's so much. I know that Jen and I, you've heard our testimonies, and we've shared some of our stories with our viewers. But when we came back to the church, and I think you felt this way too, we were like, where have we been all these years? And there's so much to dive into, and so
it's a treasure.
And I feel it's an ongoing experience.
It is.
I never stop learning. Every day there's something else I'll read, either in the scriptures or a document or a paragraph here or there. And it's just like, oh my goodness. And when you think about, I wasted 20 years that I could have been learning all this stuff.
We're blindfolded somehow.
What people should realize is it's never too late.
Right.
Anyone watching this program,
I don't care how old you are.
That's right. No matter how old you are, whether you're a grandma and you're helping out with the grandkids now and then, or maybe elderly or whatever, it's never too late to begin reading these documents.
And also, it's never too late to find your vocation. If you are still on this planet, God's not through with you yet, so He's got a plan for you.
Exactly.
And it could be married life, it could be religious life, it could also be single life. There's so many needs in the world, and we really have to really take back what it means to be a woman, to be fruitful, to be a blessing and a light to the world. Truly. truly be Christ-like and give life spiritually and as well as physically.
And to be in the world and not of the world, but really
right.
to understand and to stop and think about this. You know, I think it was Chesterton who said this thing called the Catholic Church, and to go back and to look at what we have
to treasure
in this faith, and say, okay, what, you know, because when I stopped and really started to contemplate and say, well, maybe I should go back to my Catholic roots, it was just an incredible first step in a journey that continues.
Yeah, and you know, there's just so many books and documents out there that cover these subjects, and as we know, the religious catalog has a huge selection of them. And what better way for a grandma to give the granddaughter a nice birthday present of one of these a good book, you know, from the church, that they begin to, like, don't wait till like we had to wait all these years.
Right.
You know, that's one thing a grandma can do: pass on the knowledge to their grandchildren.
The
say,
books,
you know, get them a good book, one of these Catholic teaching books.
Well, think about all the resources we've given over the past
all the homework
5
assignments,
including this episode. But we've talked about Humana Vitae, Evangelium Vitae, the Invocation of Women, the Papal Letter to Women. We've talked about the guidebooks that you have at Priests for Life for Humana Vitae. You've mentioned several books and several authors, Jason Everett and also Patrick Coffin. My book, Noise, Truth for Teens, my testimony book, Newsflash. This is all available at the EWTN catalog. You can order everything through EWTN. And you know, all the resources are going to be on the website too. The Catholic View for
as a
Women.
reminder of, you know,
so
what to
go
order.
back and look at some of these things. Obviously, you can't get everything all at once, but I would really recommend working with some of these documents, especially the Papal Letter to Women.
I mean,
Humana Vitae.
it has made all the difference for me when I was 23. I mean, reading these amazing books and discovering EWTN and watching, especially for me, it was hearing the Catholic convert stories, Edith Stein. I mean, all these stories that really, it made a huge difference for me. And EWTN has all these not only books but DVDs that we can share, and it really will make a huge difference.
And we've been talking about the saints and prominent people throughout the centuries. You know, what better way too is to have an image or a picture, a statue of pick your favorite female saint and have that in your home. I always think of Mother Angelica, who used to say to me, I said, Mother, there's so many statues and pictures here at every room you come in at EWTN. And she goes, well, Janet, there's enough things in the secular world to divert you. We need to keep your attention on the things that are important so you stay focused and you don't get drifted, you know? So that reminds me of how we started our little mini-series here with our image of the Madonna of the Kitchen. So I'd like to bring her back up and remind everybody that, you know, she's a great addition to your kitchen table. And as we know, she has the keys, which will keep the home safe and locked, but it's also the keys that could open the kingdom. They open that gates to heaven.
She's beautiful, and she's a expression of art, like we're talking about.
That's right. See how the flowing, the draping of the gown, just like what Liz Love said, the beauty of the
We only
art.
have about a minute and a half left, so we want to tell them that the Madonna is also available at the EWTN catalog. Now, we were on Father Mitch's show last year launching this program. They sold out of their stock, and they had so many on back order. So make sure you get your copy of the Madonna of the Kitchen.
And of course, for the homework assignment, you need to go to our website, thecatholicviewforwomen.com. All our resources are listed there, and please send us your feedback. We want to hear from you. What kind of programs you would like to see us continue with? Tell EWTN, tell us on our feedback forum, what topics and questions we can discuss. Friend us on Facebook, like the program.
Share the program as well.
That's right.
Right, because I'm sure this will be available on DVD as all of their programs are at EWTN. And this could be a great learning tool to sit down with your daughters and your granddaughters, or with your Bible study group, your women's Bible study group, to sit and go through the different episodes that we've done so far.
Have them over for coffee and cake,
Coffee.
Teresa.
Have them over for
That'd
coffee.
be wonderful.
Can we talk?
Yes.
Can we talk?
Well, what a great privilege it has been to work with you ladies on this series. And God willing, this will continue. And we're just so grateful for EWTN to take us up on this project and to produce this for us. And we're just so
very blessed.
What a great experience.
This is.
I hope everybody liked it, and we hope we can...
hope we can be back. And again, Janet, we want to send women to the website, correct?
That's right. thecatholicviewforwomen.com.
All right. Well, thanks. I guess I'll wrap up for Astrid Bennett Gutierrez and Janet Morana. I'm Teresa Tomeo. You can listen to me on the radio every morning at 9 o'clock on EWTN Global Catholic Radio. God bless you, and don't forget to visit our website, thecatholicviewforwomen.com.